When investigators stepped into that lonely farmhouse in Plainfield, Wisconsin, they thought they were looking for a missing woman. What they found instead was a nightmare stitched together in human skin. This is the true story of Ed Gein, the quiet farmer whose twisted obsession with death and his mother would inspire Psycho, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Silence of the Lambs. But before Hollywood turned him into fiction, the real horror lived here. Plainfield, Wisconsin, 1906. Ed Gein was born into a world already closing in on him. His father, George, was a violent alcoholic. His mother, Augusta, ruled the family with fire and scripture. She preached that women were instruments of sin, temptresses who led men to damnation. Ed and his older brother, Henry, weren't allowed to play with other children. They lived on a remote farm where Augusta kept them isolated from what she called the corruption of the world. By the time Ed reached adulthood, he had never dated, never socialized, never even seen affection expressed. His only friend was his mother, and she filled his mind with guilt, shame, and fear. When his father died in 1940, and later his brother Henry died mysteriously in a brush fire, a mysterious death that looked like they'd killed him, no fire wounds, but bruises around his neck. Some locals whispered that Ed may have caused it, but nothing was proven. After Augusta's death in 1945, Ed's fragile world shattered. He boarded up her bedroom and left it untouched, as if she might come back. Then, alone in that empty farmhouse, Ed Gein began to lose himself to the darkness. At night, Ed roamed Plainfield's small cemetery. By day, he read books about anatomy, Nazi experiments, and cannibalism. He studied how to preserve flesh and how to dig up graves. He later told police that he would visit cemeteries in a trance, hardly remembering what he'd done until he woke up at home with souvenirs. From those graves, Ed took what he wanted: body parts from recently buried women who reminded him of his mother. Inside his farmhouse, he used the remains to build what he called his projects. Human skulls became bowls. Faces were peeled off and turned into masks. Chairs and lampshades were covered in human skin. Most horrifying of all, Ed began constructing what he described as a woman suit. He wanted to become his mother, to crawl inside her skin. Literally. In December 1954, 51-year-old Mary Hogan, a friendly tavern owner, vanished without a trace. Locals joked that maybe Ed Gein knew something. He had once told a neighbor, "She's not missing. She's at my house right now." Everyone laughed, thinking it was one of Ed's strange jokes. 3 years later, that joke would prove terrifyingly true. November 16, 1957. Bernice Wardens, the local hardware store owner, failed to return home. Her son Frank, a deputy sheriff, found the shop closed, but the cash register was missing and a trail of blood led out the back door. The last name written in the sales ledger, Ed Gein. Police drove to the Gein farm that cold Wisconsin night, expecting to question a harmless, odd local. What they found would scar them forever. The officers' flashlights cut through the darkness of Gein's shed and froze. Hanging upside down from the rafters was Bernice Warden's body, gutted like a deer. Inside the farmhouse was chaos. Trash, filth, and horrors no mind could invent. Bowls made of human skulls, a belt made of nipples, a lampshade crafted from skin, masks of faces hanging on the walls, organs stored in jars, and that woman suit, stitched from the bodies of the dead. The house smelled of decay and death. Investigators later said it was like stepping into hell itself. In custody, Ed Gein seemed calm, almost polite. He told detectives that he had robbed graves about 40 times, always selecting middle-aged women who looked like his mother. He admitted killing Mary Hogan and Bernice Wardens, but claimed he had lost control. "Like my mind went blank." When asked why he made the woman suit, Gein said quietly, "I wanted to be her. I wanted to crawl into her skin." Gein was declared legally insane and committed to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. A decade later, he was found competent to stand trial, convicted of Bernice Warden's murder in 1968, but remained in psychiatric care for life. He spent 30 years behind hospital walls, tending plants and reading magazines. On July 26, 1984, Ed Gein died of lung cancer at 77. Even in death, he was infamous. Souvenir hunters chipped away at his gravestone until it was finally removed to prevent vandalism. Hollywood could hardly look away. In 1960, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho gave us Norman Bates, the quiet motel clerk obsessed with his dead mother. In 1974, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre unleashed Leatherface, the killer who wore human skin masks. And in 1991, The Silence of the Lambs created Buffalo Bill, another man who wanted to be a woman, sewing skin into a suit. Each of these villains was born from the horrors of Ed Gein. Yet none fully captured the loneliness, delusion, and deep sickness that lived in that small farmhouse in Plainfield. Psychologists describe Ed Gein as a man whose reality fractured under the weight of loss, guilt, and repression. He wasn't a monster in the cinematic sense. He was the nightmare of what happens when isolation, obsession, and trauma go unchecked. In the quiet Midwest of the 1950s, he reminded America that evil doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it lives next door, smiling shyly, offering to fix your fence, hiding unthinkable secrets behind a locked door. When the lights of Plainfield went out each night, no one imagined the darkness inside that farmhouse. The butcher of Plainfield wasn't a myth, he was real. And his story still crawls beneath the skin of every horror film that came after. I'm True Crime Secrets, and this was the story of Ed Gein, the man who turned nightmares into reality.